Hello, everyone. I am John Stoner with the Career Village at the Diana Initiative. I'm super excited to be able to interview Tracy Maleeff today. But first, before we get started with all of that, I really want to thank our sponsors. We couldn't have the Diana Initiative this year without our sponsors. So our Career Village sponsors are Microsoft, Prelude, Target, MongoDB, Amazon, Verizon, Juniper, and Penzies Spices. So we're really excited, and I just want to thank all of them before we get started today. So, hi everyone. It's exciting to be here. We were glad, Tracy, you were able to make it. We weren't sure if that was going to happen, but we're so happy to have you. So, before we get started, why don't I get you to introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Tracy Maleeff. You may also know me as InfoSec Sherpa, and I'm delighted to be here today. I have been involved with the Diana Initiative before it was known by that current name. So, for a couple of years now. So, I'm just thrilled to be here. And John is excellent. So, I'm so glad you're doing this with me. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm so glad we actually met a few weeks ago for the first
Right.
time. It was very exciting at the Women in Cyber Jitsu conference here in Maryland. So,
Absolutely.
I don't think we'll spend a lot of time on it, but did you want to give people sort of a quick background on how you got into cybersecurity, at least an overview? And if you're really interested, I think there's probably some other videos that they could go watch.
Yeah, there's definitely stuff I can share. But first, I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge my hashtag GinfoSec. I have a gin and tonic with me. I'm using Blue Coat gin made here in Philadelphia, and it's the bourbon barrel infused gin, which is very yummy. So, uh, if you ever follow me on Twitter, you know I use the term hashtag GinfoSec, which is just basically sitting around talking about InfoSec, enjoying some gin. So, since that's what we're doing right now, wanted to, to show that. So, let me take a sip. Okay, so yes, I'm only going to cover a little bit of my career change into infosec because I feel like I've talked about it a lot, and some of you are probably like, "All right, lady, we know, like you used to be a librarian." So yes, I was a librarian for a long time. I have a master's degree in library and lot. Oh my goodness, there's my Philly accent coming out. The library and information science. Sometimes that accent comes out. Um, and yeah, I just decided that I had reached all I could do in the law firm library field, and I wanted something different. And I read this great article in Entrepreneur Magazine called "How to Future Proof Your Career," um, and it asked you to do an exercise of thinking of what one topic or what one aspect of all your past jobs did you really enjoy and invigorated you. And for me, that was tech. So I first started out on a path of getting into tech, realized I didn't like those people, and I felt more at home with the security folks. And that it's a much longer story, but it's basically I made the decision to turn my life upside down, and some of you listening to this, watching this, may have too. So congratulations, we're all here. And I think it was worth it. um, I spent a long time, long, maybe, I don't know, my first year. And some of you, and I'm mentioning this because some of you may feel this as well, is you're not far enough along, you don't know enough, um, you know, that you still may be harboring questions that do you really belong here? Stop. Yes, you do. You're here now. Start where you are and go from there. Um, that was something that really weighed on my mind, and I shared that with someone who is a long time, uh, expert in this field, who's been around this field for so long. And I told him my concerns. I said, I feel like I don't know enough. I feel like I can't catch up to all this information. I can't absorb it all. And he said to me, I'm jealous of you and I'm envious of you. I'm like, what do you mean you're envious of me? And he said, all this information basically turns over every 3 years. He's like, I have so many years. I have 30 years of, now pretty much useless information, outdated information, but you get to learn from a much higher up place and go from there. And he's like, you know, I'm envious. He's like, I wish I could, have my base of knowledge be something much further along than what I have. So that really changed my perspective. And another comment was I was at a women in tech event, and I also kind of felt awkward because everyone in the room was much, much younger than me. So I kind of gravitated towards this guy standing in the back of the room who I believe to be more around my age. And I was just kind of chatting with him about this whole, I don't know about this. I'm not feeling like I belong. And, he basically just looked at me. He said, "You're here now. Just you're in it. Just, keep treading water. You'll get it. You're here now." And I want to impart that with some of you too who might be struggling. If you didn't pass a cert the first time, don't give up. I didn't pass the Net Plus cert. And that's a long story, but I was smiling when I saw the score, so much to the point the proctor had to go, "Ma'am, you failed." And I said, "No, I know, but I didn't fail as badly as I thought I would have, because I didn't fail by that much." So I knew, I was like, "Oh, this is within striking reach." Okay. So those are little tips to kind of help turn your mind around, rather than wallow in, "Oh, I didn't pass this, I failed at this." This is a new industry, relatively speaking, especially compared to library science. Library science has been around a lot longer than information security, and even tech, if you look at the grand scheme of things. So take it easy on yourself. Take it easy on others. We're all still learning this. This changes constantly. Things change all the time. Another true story. I was at an event, I believe it was in May, and someone asked me about quantum computing and cybersecurity related to it, and where they could get information about it. And I remember saying, "Well, at this point, it's only really a lot of the major scientific and engineering publications that are really writing about it." Yes, that was true in May, and then wasn't it like maybe 2 weeks later where I think Forbes or Fortune was writing about it, and a lot of these mainstream publications? Things move fast, so give yourself a break, and give others a break, and just, we're here now. You know, put some floaties on, tread water. You're going to get it. We're all going to get it. We're all going to get there together. And some people pick things up faster than others. Good for them. Some people can sit down and bust out a tune on a piano. I can't. Barely, so we're all good at different things. So, you're running your own race, okay? So that's what I don't want people to get upset thinking I don't belong here, I'm not smart enough, I'm not good enough. Something about this industry attracted you, and you should use that and build on that to have a successful career.
Yeah, that's some great advice. I apologize if anybody hears thunder, and hopefully everything is fine in Maryland. Um, you brought up some great points, and your point around like being involved in that conference early, talking
Hmm.
to that gentleman, and you said you kind of wanted to talk about networking a little bit. What
Absolutely.
what I try to tell people is you have to find your group of people. You have to like be extroverted enough or channel it to find the right group of people that you kind of connect with. You kind of want to talk about how that process went for you and sort of your advice for others to find your group of people in cybersecurity.
Oh, John, you said one of my trigger words. Extra extroverted. I have a whole rant which I will not bore everyone with, but um, personally, I will not hold this against you, John. I respect you too much. Personally, I do not care for the terms introvert, extrovert, ambivert, etc. Let me explain why. Because in my lifetime, I have seen too many people use it as an excuse for either bad behavior. I've seen people say, "Oh, who bust up a party and are rude to people," and then they'll say, "Oh, well, I'm an extrovert. I can't help it." That's not what that means. Or I'll see people who are really losing out on professional opportunities by not going to networking events, saying, "Well, I'm an introvert. I can't go to a cocktail party." That's not what that means. Those terms, so if you want to know the origin of these terms, go look up the writings and the research of Carl Jung. um, it's meant from where you get your power, your energy. So yes, to some people, going to a cocktail party is very draining, and maybe you can only stand 15 minutes of it. Great. You know what? It's 2022. We have apps. You can have an app call you or set an alarm, fake a phone call, so that you can go do 15-minute 15-minute increments, easy for me to say. Um, and and then pop out after 15, say, oh, I got to take this call, I'm so sorry. Go outside, go to the restroom, recoup, get that energy back. Now if you get power from being around people, super. Why don't you be a friend to someone and help introduce people then? I do not care. I will go up and talk to anyone. And so yes, if you see me at an event and you like, oh, can I walk around with you, and you introduce me to people, sure, I don't care. I will talk to anyone. But that's me. But yes, even though and then I do reach a limit at some point, but my threshold is going to be different than yours. So all I ask people to do is refrain from using those labels of those terms that have been misquoted from Union Times, from his original works, and just know yourself. You know what, I can do 15 minutes tops, or maybe this time I'm going to try 20 minutes, or and then maybe it's like, nope, nope, I'm going to go back to 15. That's fine. Just know yourself and use these little tools, or use a person to help introduce you. So sorry, I wanted to get that out of the way. But yes, the bottom line is professional networking with people, not talking about computers here, with people, is super duper duper important. I cannot stress this enough. Um, I was on a panel not too long, or I guess maybe last year or 2 years ago, and we were asked, how's networking got you any jobs? And I thought back, I had a harder time trying to think of a job I haven't gotten that didn't result from networking. And then on the panel was a black man in infosec who said he couldn't think of any jobs he'd gotten from networking. So that's one of my things. Number one is your professional network circle needs to be diverse, and I'm not talking about just race, I'm talking about age. You want to have people older than you, people younger than you, people in other industries, people in other countries, people who have a GED to people who have a PhD. You need to have a diverse network, because you need to be able to meet different types of people, learn from them, and they can learn from you. And yes, jobs can come out of this, because if someone sees an opening at their company and they just had a really good conversation with you, and you wowed them and dazzled them, with your knowledge, then they're going to think of you. Or if you see a job at the company and you met with them previously, reach out to them. Hopefully you've already reached out to them initially after your first meeting, um, and say, hey, I saw that there's a job at your company. May I list you as a reference when I apply? Because that's how you get past these screeners and you get opportunities to speak. But it's kind of complicated. It's a lot of juggling, right? It's a lot of different balls in the air of, you need to meet people, and it kind of needs to be like a seesaw. Okay. Now, when the conference that John was just mentioning, the Women's Society of Cyber Jitsu conference, I gave this whole talk about networking, right? But I used gardening analogies. Um, so what happens with the garden? You need to plant a seed, but that's not it, right? You need to grow it, you have to water it, maybe fertilize it depending on what you're growing, maybe you have to weed it. But you just don't plant it and it's all of a sudden, oh, I have a rose bush. No, you have to tend to these things. So you need to think of your professional network like a garden, like that. Like, you need to tend to it. Don't keep going to the same people all the time. If you've ever heard of rotating crops, you leave a field fallow, meaning you don't plant anything in it. You need to do that. You need to be diversify who you reach out to ask favors, for example. Because if you keep going to the same people all the time, you're going to wear down that relationship, right? So it's really not that much different than gardening, to be honest. And I want you also to think of it as a seesaw. Like, you want it to be level, right? You don't want always to be asking someone for their help. Now, you might be thinking at this point of, well, what do I have to offer someone? Okay, true. Maybe you connect with a CISO and you're brand new, and you might think, well, what do I have to offer them? Well, you could offer them a different perspective on something, because presumably if they're a CISO, they've had a lot of experience, and you have new experience and new eyes. So you could be offering them a different way to look at things. Or you could see a news article that reminded you of them because of one of their interests, or, oh, I know that you told me about your team in Poland and I just saw this really interesting story about cybersecurity in Poland and I wanted to send it to you. It doesn't matter whether or not they've already seen the article. The fact that you're offering them something will help keep that seesaw level where it should be. So I want you to just forget that fact of like, or that you have in your head of like, I can't offer anybody anything. That's not true. You can offer a lot more than you think. And it's important to develop these relationships because people will think of you. So, going back to when I got started, my career change into InfoSec, I worked very hard to network with people. And I was getting very frustrated. And one day, I've received 4 rejection emails in one day. And one of them was for a job that said researcher, which required excellent research skills. And I still got a rejection. I was like, hello. Um, so I was really disappointed and down, and out of frustration, I reached out to Joe Gray. Hopefully, you know Joe Gray. And I said, what do I have to do to get past these screeners and just talk to someone and get them to understand what I can offer their company with my skill set? And Joe, is very, very good, very quick thinking, said, do you mind if I post about you on my social media? And at that point, I was like, couldn't hurt, why not? Um, so basically, he sent this very, like, almost chastising tweet of, I can't believe none of you people haven't hired this, this woman yet. And I'm not joking. 20 to 30 minutes later, I got a DM saying, oh, I didn't realize you were looking for a job. We're hiring right now for entry level and I'd like to talk to you. 2 weeks later, I had an interview. A month or so after that, I had my first InfoSec job. Okay. So, one lesson out of that is, as obvious as you think you are being that you're looking for a job, be way more obvious. In this case, less is not more, more is more. Because I thought I was being super obvious that I was looking for a job. So for when he said, "Oh, I didn't realize you're looking for a job," I thought like, well, short of taking out, a banner, a plain banner, I didn't know what else to do. But this is how networking can help you, because I was able to connect with Joe, who then I felt comfortable enough to lament to him that I, was getting really stuck and frustrated. He did something about it. Turns out somebody had been watching my progress, and boom, there you go. So, and I know that that sounds all very easy and all, but I mean, I did work very hard to, make connections and absorb and get to know people and ask them questions, understand. So networking is very important, but maintaining it is important as well. You don't want to connect with someone and then just never connect with them again. Um, no, and that can be hard. So you need to maybe dedicate some time to it, maybe an hour a week. Just go through, follow up with people, like some posts, comment on posts. When you get those reminders of it's so and so's work anniversary or something, it doesn't cost anything to be nice, right? Either to someone's face or over LinkedIn or something. Um, so that's just really important to me, and it's just really important to also, it's to have diverse networks. If someone comes to you, asking for recommendations of maybe someone to interview for an article, to appear on a podcast or something like that, try to stay away from the usual suspects, right? There's a lot of times when and I want to make sure I'm clear about this. It's one thing just to turn down an offer yourself and then leave the person requesting to go off on their own to find another one of the usual suspects. You should be, ask them for like, it's like, oh, let me get back to you about this. Find someone or a couple names to offer them. This is how change happens and how we get people from underrepresented communities visible, is if you help bring them to light. Don't expect someone, if you just say no, that they're going to magically go find the right people, underrepresented groups to talk to. You need to help them and say, look, here's a list of 5 people I think you should reach out to. um, I learned this lesson the hard way once. I was on a city bus and I happened to be in one of the reserved seats for disabled folks, because at the time I was having an issue, but I we were coming up on a bus stop and I saw that there were some people with walkers and things like that. And I thought to myself, like, all right, my big butt can move to the back of the, the bus. So I get up, but fully thinking to myself, oh, well, that seat will remain open for someone with one of those walkers who needs it. Well, that's not what happened. Somebody who was, you know, somebody who didn't have a walker all of a sudden got in that seat and I got mad. I got mad, like, no, that wasn't for you, because what I should have done is I should have waited for the person to with the walker to get on and then get up and offered my seat. Um, and I know you might be thinking like that's completely different from this. Not really. You can hope and wish that other people have the best intentions, but they might not. They might not be on the same wavelength as you. So sometimes you need to be very deliberate with your actions, and it's not to make yourself feel better. I wasn't looking to get any praise from giving up my seat. I just knew it was the right thing to do. I just went about it wrong. Okay. So that's just a little lesson I want to teach you. So networking is super important. Be very deliberate about it. Don't assume that others have your same best interests in mind. And if you're asked to do something and either you can't or don't want to, sometimes people will approach you to interview you about something that maybe isn't in your wheelhouse, isn't your skill set. You know, try then to recommend some names, especially if it's someone from an underrepresented group, and say, oh, go check them out. And, give them a link to their LinkedIn or their Twitter. Again, don't make someone go research it, because we're all lazy, right? So if you just give me a name that's like, Sharon Jones, okay, good. Go find, Sharon Jones out there in the wild. They're not going to do it, right? They're just going to go back to the usual suspects, and then underrepresented folks don't get their turn, at center stage. And that's, to me, that's very important. So that's how networking can help, because it can also help with your career development, right? You can learn from each other. You can get different perspectives from each other. I have grown so much professionally and just personally with the mentoring that I do, of African InfoSec folks, students and professionals. They have a different perspective. They have a different threat model. So it's very interesting to learn from people, their different perspectives of security, the different struggles they have, the different points of view. This makes you a better information security professional by understanding different points of view, and how security actions on one end can have a very different effect on, somewhere else in the world. A quick example of that was, I heard, where one of the companies I worked at, I heard that the phishing fail rates were very high for Latin America. And I remember asking, like, well, is the information in English or Spanish or Portuguese? Like, oh, it's in English. Okay, so you're asking people whose first language is most likely not English to understand a phishing campaign, in another language. And I'm like, no, you need to have this stuff in their language. That, and like, oh, don't forget Portuguese for all the Brazilians. There's, millions of them too. It's not just Spanish. I hear that a lot too. It's like just everything Spanish for Latin America. Like, yeah, there's that giant country called Brazil there, don't speak Spanish. Um, so again, that's another example. It's like, oh, okay, well, what happens when you give them the phishing instructions in their native language? Oh, it improved. Oh, imagine that. Imagine that. Yeah, exactly. Surprise. So that's what I'm talking about. It's so understanding, how underrepresented groups, how people different from you can help build you up as a professional, help you with your security. It's just going to make you a better person and a better professional.
Yeah, I think getting involved is important, and that can look like different things to different people. But I found volunteering to also be a good way to network, but also then I was volunteering, so it also didn't feel like networking because it was just volunteering. um, what is your recommendation maybe for someone who is a little more hesitant, or isn't as comfortable? Like, do you think volunteering at the organizations is a good option?
Oh, definitely. Volunteering is great. And, again, if you're not comfortable being at the check in table, maybe ask for a more behind the scenes role. Okay. You don't have to be the usher in the theater. You could be backstage working the lights or something like that. Let's use another analogy, the theater. Not everybody feels comfortable going out to center stage. I mean, me, if you hand me a microphone, I won't shut up. Case in point, I will just keep talking. But I realize not everyone is like that. So sometimes, you have people who are the ushers who deal with the people, with the general public. But there's all kinds of backstage people, that you don't see, right? They don't speak to the audience, they don't interact. And if that sounds like a dream job for you, guess what? There are tons of backstage kinds of roles for all these conferences. So just, yes, I highly recommend volunteering, but explain what you're comfortable with. And then that way you're going to meet people, but on a smaller level. And also probably other people who, like you, really enjoy those backstage roles. Right. So rather than sit up front of the registration desk with me talking your ear off about stuff, you're going to be with more like-minded people. I know how I am. It's okay. I know what it is. One other thing I want to touch on real quick, John, because we're running out of time. Um, I was mentioning to John before we came live, and didn't want to forget to mention it. So not only is networking important, but so is keeping up with the news. Now, yes, I know that the world is a dumpster fire right now, and it's hard. It's very hard to keep up on the news for mental health reasons. Oh, excuse me, but this is the gin and tonic talking. But this is the thing. Um, the better you can explain cybersecurity incidents in non-technical, conversational, easy breezy cover girl terms, the better it's going to be for your career, because you may find yourself in a situation where you need to explain these concepts to a board of directors, to maybe an HR manager, and forget about, friends, relatives, people on the street, please. If I was talking by the end of one of my physical therapy sessions years ago, by the end of it, I was showing her a password manager. So whomever you choose to speak to, this is going to be a really good skill for you to have. So not only is it important to stay up on the news to understand what's going on, but just practice in your head. Practice explaining it, practice on family, practice on friends, or practice on someone who is technical, and can they understand what you're saying in non-technical terms. Because believe me, sometimes you have to talk to the really technical folks, and you sound like Charlie Brown's teacher when you're trying to talk to them as a liberal arts major. I've been there for that. So being able to explain, cybersecurity incidents, like take Colonial Pipeline, can you in a non-technical way explain that to someone so that they understand it? But say if you're speaking in a business environment, why they should care, what the bottom line is. So, things you can practice are persuasive speaking. I know there's probably a LinkedIn Learning or a YouTube about it. Uh, Learn how, the art of persuasion. And I don't mean this in any, you're not trying to swindle someone. You're just trying to get them to understand why they should approve your security budget. You might be speaking to a CFO who's not technical, but they know money. So guess what? You explain things to them in dollars or euros or pounds or whatever, whatever dollar, whatever currency it is. That versatility will make you very valuable, because then, when your more technical folks might get flustered of, oh, I don't know how to explain this, well, you it's a session ticket, something, something, something. And the poor board is like, eyes are glazing over, going, I don't know what this means. So you can, like, oh, I got this. Well, you see, since they mentioned ticket, think of it like a movie theater, and, just riff off of that. I also highly recommend going to improv classes. I've done a couple improv classes, and I know you might be thinking this sounds really strange, but it's not. Improv is infosec, right? You're dropped in the middle of a bizarre situation that you don't know all the facts about yet, and you're just kind of winging it. And your purpose is to get through the scene with your scene partner. Take improv classes. You won't regret it. It will help with your communication and thinking on your feet. And we are at time.
No, that's fantastic. I actually have a good friend who's in vulnerability management, and Ronnie took improv classes. He's very funny, but yeah, Tracy, explaining things, the number of times my mom asked me a technical question, what happened to the DNC? Were they hacked? What's going on with Russia, Ukraine? Right? This storytelling and ability to explain a
Right.
technical subject to my mom is actually a skill I have for work because you're explaining things to senior people, right? Depending on your role. But
Hmm.
like, even if you're in the SOC, what if they're, here's the tour of all these fancy important VIPs, right? Everybody cleans up, and then they're like, oh, what are all those tickets about, right? I mean, like, you can't be like, oh, that's this one might be a malware where they're downloading a macro. They don't know what any of those words are you just explained.
And they're not excited about pew pew screens, I think, as we are. So,
Yeah,
but Johnny made a good point too. Even if you're not the one doing the talking, maybe you could do a write up for your boss, and or your manager or whatever relationship you have with them. You can also supply other people with this, because ultimately this is a team sport, right? And the goal is that the team wins. But if you're that possessive of this knowledge, then again, maybe you shouldn't be in infosec, because to me infosec is a team sport and you need to be working together. So yeah, even if you're not the one presenting it, you might be eventually, but in the meantime you could help further your cause of, say, like getting the security budget approved. If you maybe work with your manager and say, hey, I have some ideas on how we can pitch to get the budget approved, here I go. What's the worst going to happen? They're going to say no, or if they take credit for it and say it was their idea, you deal with that later. This is what documentation is for. This is what also publicly saying out loud with witnesses of, here are my notes and my ideas. I'm laughing, but I'm totally serious. There's ways to do that. So yeah, I hope this was helpful. I didn't see any comments come through or anything. I hope people are enjoying this.
yeah, I
Yeah.
don't see any questions. I've been trying to keep an eye on things. I want to thank you so much for your time today. This has been a pleasure. It's always great to hear something. Every time I hear one of your presentations, I learn something new. I will try to make sure I explain introverts and extroverts if I use those terms, because I 100% agree with you, though. I'm an introvert because it takes my energy to do things
Yeah.
like this, right?
And that's fine. And I just don't like when people use that as an excuse, because they're really just hurting themselves and they're misusing it. And
Yep.
like I said, I could talk about this. The whole Myers-Briggs thing, that was somebody who figured out a way to monetize Yun's work.
Yeah.
And so it's really kind of like a bastardization, but yet people will live and die by it. They'll like intractably introduce themselves with their Myers-Briggs score. And I'm like, yeah, that means nothing. You can answer things a certain way and get a certain result. So that doesn't mean
Yeah.
anything to me.
Yeah. All right. Well,
Awesome.
thank
Oh
you
yeah, I
so
wanted to
much.
show too. I got my Diana Initiative
Woo.
on. I'm all ready to go, and I'll be speaking in Vegas at Diana Initiative. So I'll see everyone there.
We're
Thank you
excited for
so
that.
much for having me, and I don't want to
Yeah.
hold things up here, but thank you so much, everyone.
Good luck to your team this year. And
That-
well,
you too.
I'll be excited to watch Liverpool and Everton play. All right.
Absolutely. Go
Thank you
go.
so much.
Bye.
Bye.